Welcome to the Love, Purpose, Connection podcast. I am your host, Estelle Bingham, and together we'll be delving into the profound meaning of love, the driving force of purpose, and the beauty of connection that shapes the fabric of our lives. In each episode, I sit down with some of the most inspiring individuals out there to understand the ways love has touched them. Elizabeth Hamilton-Guarino is the woman that can help you redefine success and find your purpose. Elizabeth is a best-selling self-help author and personal development expert, dedicated to helping people navigate change and find peace. Elizabeth is also the founder of besteveryou.com and has helped thousands of people globally to live their best lives. She strongly believes in treating people with gratitude, love, and kindness, making her a perfect guest for today's episode as we talk about her most recent offering, the Success Guidebook. Welcome, Elizabeth, to the Love, Purpose, Connection podcast. So wonderful to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely amazing. And I'm really excited to talk about the Success Guidebook because in my practice, I can't really count how many times people arrive not living their authentic lives and not knowing what their purpose is. It's a sort of, it's one of those, almost like a spiritual, it's a sort of spiritual dark night of the soul, isn't it? Because you can start with an idea of who you are, an idea of success, an idea of purpose, in your 20s, after college, after university, and then you get to a point somewhere in your life where you're either not fulfilled or you're not, it's not setting you on fire anymore. It's not, your heart isn't singing. And it's this, age-old question of how do I find my way back to my authentic life and my idea of success. And I really liked this, how you start the book, which is redefine your idea of success because it only belongs to you. It doesn't belong to anyone else. Tell me a little bit about that.
I think mic drop right there. That was pretty
That was
good.
your book.
That was pretty great, actually. Yeah, that's the book. I'm 55 and I'm a mom of 4 sons. They're 23, 25, 27, and 29 now. And I've been married for a really long time. And you're right. You do get to a point where you're like, okay, what's this all about? And you go back and you look and have I done this right or that right? And I think one of my goals is to capture that feeling only for people at a much younger age. So you don't have to figure it out in your 40s and 50s and 60s and so forth. So you don't reach that moment, but you know those tools and have them in your toolbox your whole life. And so I talk a lot with people about change, a lot with people about gratitude, success, and really making sure we go all here and think with our heart and go from here to here all the time. Because I think we spend a lot of time here in our heads wondering what success is all about. Am I successful? Is somebody better than me? This, that, or another thing. And really what it is you've got to come right here to your heart and think with your heart and find what your authentic purpose is for being here and so forth. And that can be tricky because people are afraid to go right here and there's no mathematical answer to it. 2 plus 2 doesn't equal 4 when you're right here. You don't know whether you're going in the right direction or not. And sometimes failure comes in and all sorts of things.
It's so true because it's so many people spend so much time outside of their hearts. They're terrified of dropping into their hearts, actually. But what we know is the mind doesn't set us free, right? It doesn't hold the key to the authentic life that we're yearning for somewhere. Some part of us is always yearning for that.
Yeah.
And you say in the book, comparing to others is we're going to scratch that, right? Like compare and despair. Like that's we're doing a big
Yeah.
scratch on that immediately. What do we do, Elizabeth? What would you suggest that we do to actually start this journey? So we're kind of coming into the heart, but then to start this journey of redefining our ideas of success. Where do we go to do that?
I think we go with our story. We need to figure out and assess what's happened, what's going on in our lives and so forth. So for example, for me, way back when I had been resuscitated while 6 months pregnant with our third son. And I have life-threatening food allergies, 4 life-threatening, real deal life-threatening food allergies. And so my son and I were in the hospital for a pretty long time, over a week, trying to make sure we both survived. And, it's in those moments where you sit and you think, okay, what are my footprints going to be? How am I going to interact with people? How how do I really want to leave people better off than the way I found them? And all of those things. And so when you're looking at your life and thinking, am I successful at what's going on in my world? You want to start with an assessment, like in each area of your life. And then you want to throw in some imagination, some visualization, and some believing in yourself.
Yeah.
In the beginning of the book, I talk a lot about baseball.
Baseball's a really amazing analogy for a lot of this, how we can become whatever we want to become. I remember Malachi's coach said to him, you've got it in you.
Yeah.
Sport is a great analogy for what that looks like, right?
That belief in yourself is something that is very hard to teach. It's very hard to tap into, and it's very hard to maintain. And that is a real driving force for a lot of people's successes. The underdogs, the people that believe in themselves to the point of almost delusion. Sometimes those are the people we get behind. I think of the Savannah Bananas here in the United States, and they're probably going to go worldwide. You can see it happening. If you don't know who the Savannah Bananas are, look them up. But they were on an air mattress in a dilapidated apartment, eating crackers with their bank overdrawn, and they believed in themselves and nobody else did. Everybody was like, you need to stop now, kind of thing. And now they're worldwide, and it depends on what's going on in your own mind and in your own heart and so forth. And then pulling people on board around you that are in line with your vision and so forth. Teams, for example, we don't win as a team unless we're all on that same page, that same goal. You throw down your ego, you throw down your I and your me for we and us. And that's life. When you throw down the I and the me for we and us, we collectively do amazing things.
We really do.
When you lift other people up, it's an amazing moment, because we don't all go around feeling perfectly in every moment, and we hide it really well too. You can, I always say, when we're passing people, even just in passing, pause for humanity, pause for people.
I love that pause for humanity is so, that's like what life is. That's peace, right? When we can just do that and we give ourselves permission to be interconnected and connected, and we give ourselves to be part of humanity, give ourselves permission to be part of humanity. That's where we find peace ultimately, when we're not on the run, we're not in separation, the illusion of separation. But it's so interesting when you talk about this idea of collaboration, and also but this almost kind of crazy belief in self. And obviously, I see a lot of people, and as do you, Elizabeth, I'm sure, who come to you who haven't had that growing up. And I didn't have that growing up, where I had a parent who was really, I wasn't surrounded by love, and I had to kind of really dig deep. And for me, that was my spiritual connection. But also, this idea of what I had to kind of work that out. I had to figure it out. And there was a time in my early 20s where I wanted to be a TV host, and I started off as the worst PA, worst assistant known to man. I managed to get a job at the BBC, but I was literally like the worst PA known to man. I don't know how I actually managed to survive.
I know that feeling. Yeah.
I do that, the technique that we all know now, is it's out there a lot, the visualization technique. Joe Dispenza talks about it, how to future manifest. So I would literally put myself in the studio, and I'd be doing what I was doing, even though there was nothing in my life at all that was mirroring that back to me. And then it happened, so then that came into being. It came into being. What do you think about the fake it to make it slogan?
It's actually in my Hay House book, Percolate, Let Your Best Self Filter Through, that exact thing. And I think what we I think people rip on fake it till you make it a lot. They do not like that slogan because they think you're actually faking it. And really what you're doing is visualizing your success moving forward. So I'm actually a huge fan of that, which might be contrary to popular belief because I don't think people are interpreting that statement correctly. It's a visualization technique. It's where you're putting into practice and motion what you're trying to do.
100%.
And that takes practice.
I think it's been misinterpreted. It's this idea of just embodying a feeling of what the future feels like and being that powerful visualization, which changes your cells. It changes your frequency. Your frequency is suddenly it's basically set up for success. So my frequency was calling in my future as a TV host, which before, like there's like I said, there's nothing to say that I could do that or would do that. But I just sat with that visualization every day, spent a lot of time with that.
With the fake it till you make it thing and giving yourself permission to be terrible at it. That's the part of it. That's why people feel like they're faking it. That imposter syndrome is a little bit of a way of fake it till you make it feeling. That's the new words for it. Imposter syndrome. Oh, I have I've felt that before. I have all these books and things like that, but oh my gosh, I don't have a PhD. Am I credible? Am I this? Am I that? And you believe in you. You believe in your messages. You believe what you've done and so forth. And you're going to learn along the way. And you really have to give yourself permission to not be perfect at it.
I really like that, Elizabeth. I think that's so important.
I do always say that I think kids in particular, maybe all of us, I'm not really sure, should be equipped with earplugs and bubble wrap all day long. Maybe not literally, but earplugs for the naysayers so that when you believe in yourself, you can maintain the belief in yourself because, all it could take is like one coach or one comment or one thing and it just sticks right in your mind. And then you forever got that doubt. And it's like, no, earplugs and bubble wrap because it's real bumpy out there. It's real noisy out there. And you being able to maintain authentically you can be really bumpy. It's a bumpy ride and a bumpy climb and it's messy. And that's okay.
It's so interesting you talk about naysayers because I've got a section in my book, Elizabeth, it's called Naysayers. How to spot them and what to do with them, right? And so again, growing up, if you've grown up with those voices with your parents or the teachers, or you've been bullied at school or different bits and pieces, there'll be that naysayer imprint. And then obviously the naysayer also then you become the naysayer too. Or we keep bringing in those types of personalities around us. And I remember that at the time when I was looking to manifest this dream, I had a boyfriend who was a naysayer, and I had to sort of dump him, and in doing that, it was a kind of a part of my lack of self-belief that I was really just saying enough, like this is done, like it's this is I'm moving forward into the unknown. And often that's the really scary thing for people, right? It's just the unknown, like what it feels like that moment where it's in between, that liminal space, that imposter time, like, well, I don't really know where I'm going, but I'm going to do it. And sort of, you step away from the past, those limiting ideas of self, to really go on the adventure of life. And I really love that in the book as well. Just this idea of, the actualizing. I love those words, like actualizing self, your authentic self, that's the adventure of life. That's why we're here ultimately.
Most of what I do is helping people remember the love for themselves, feeling enough, and then really understanding their gifts, talents, and their uniqueness and loving that about themselves. I was on a call yesterday and said to the gal, what are your gifts and talents? And she was near crying, like, I don't know. And it's those people who we want in our company so that we can give them some positive energy and some guidance and so forth, and to remember who they are. Or if they can't see their gifts and talents, to show them.
Absolutely.
A big part of my books is my dad. My dad was a stroke survivor from 2004 to 2018. He passed away October 19th, 2018. Huge part of my life, huge part of Best Ever You. And I remember I went home for Christmas the year before he died, and I was with him, and he looked at me and he said, this is probably the last Christmas that you'll see me. I don't think I will be here next year. And he was right. And I'm like, oh, you're just talking, kind of thing. And he had an unshakable belief in himself. I'll go back. But he knew. It was so interesting. And I said, what am I going to do without you? And he said, well, you're going to put one paw in front of the other and keep moving forward, because I love cats and dogs. And, it just sticks with me. When you have a tough time, you got to put one paw in front of the other and keep going. And it's tough to do that some moments. And you do feel like you're faking it till you make it, or faking your positive to talk yourself into being positive. It's a vicious cycle in a way, and one that applying awareness to, with the stop and the pause and the mindset and the alignment and all of it, really can catch you from sadness and the lower vibrational energy. And if you do feel sad, you have the ability to know how to maneuver through it and, bring your vibration back up. So it's a loop if you let it, and helping and surrounding yourself with people who break that loop, break that cycle, help you move forward with positive energy, find the peace, joy, love, whatever it is. Those are powerful people to hang around, more powerful than people who have whatever, a nice car or money. That's the whole point of the book, is to make sure that you understand how to redefine success and your life personally and professionally for you, not through the eyes of other people, not through what other people want for you, not through any dollar, any analytic, any material object or anything. And when my dad had his first series of strokes, he was in a rehab facility, and there wasn't much hope. It was a bad situation. And they somehow got him up and put him in a speech therapy session. I'm like, this is stupid. This isn't going to work. I was negative in that moment. I'm like, this is really just ridiculous kind of thing. And I'm getting mad because they're rough. It felt like they were roughing him up and things like that to get him to this speech therapy. My mom and I were in there, and the nurse says, okay, so we're going to do speech with you, Jim. And my mom and I are kind of rolling our eyes like, this is pointless. And she goes, Jim, when I say A, I want you to tell me the first word that comes to your mind. And the nurse kind of looks at us and says, listen, what's happened, most people don't say a word, so don't get all upset. And I'm like, I'm upset, kind of thing. Anyway, she goes A, and he says, aardvark. And we're like, oh my. And this is in Percolate, the Hay House book. So some of it is anyway. And then he said, benevolence, courage, determination, excellence. F was a swear word that I've changed to faith, goodness, happiness, integrity, on and on and on. M was movies, and P was platypus. So in the book, it's find your inner aardvark and platypus. And just in those moments, he put his foot down like, I'm here, folks, and I'm surviving. And then we figured it out. We're like, oh my, to survive an experience like this, we need to make sure all the nurses and doctors care beyond. We need to visualize out of the hospital. We need to surround him with things that he loves, like movies and music and us and things. And we put every picture known to mankind on a wall, because he was in there a long time. And the nurses and doctors would come in and tell us we were an example of how to keep somebody alive.
Incredible.
Yeah. And he survived things that I'm not quite sure how he survived it. The angels are definitely there on his side.
Really real love.
Yeah, but that's life. That's what we need. That's what we need around us. The reminders that we're meant to be here.
That's so true, that we're important. Yeah.
We're important to each other and important to ourselves, and remembering our value in every moment, because we're not entitled to time. We're absolutely, once you figure that out, we are not entitled to much. And once you figure that out, especially time, it makes you take a step back and go, okay, what am I doing? What am I doing with my time here?
Every second matters. It really does. Hi, it's Estelle here, and I'm so excited to share my new book with you, Manifest Your True Essence, Clear Your Blocks, find your joy, live your truth. This is more than just a book. It's an invitation to come home to your heart. Within its pages, you'll find the guidance to reconnect with your true essence. Through gentle meditations, heart-centered practices, and soulful wisdom, you'll learn how to release old patterns, embrace your divine spark, and manifest a life filled with love, purpose, and connection. Remember, you are love, you are light, and you are infinitely powerful. I want to take you back to this idea of, just so everyone's clear, when we talk about the frequency of good people and how that helps us live our, transform our lives and really live a good life, really, like a meaningful life, not being surrounded by people who will not champion you, who don't have your back, who don't mirror back the truth. Sometimes the truth is it's not always going to be unicorns and butterflies, but it's just, underneath that is love, that real love for something that you can, the truth of a relationship, proper foundations. But when we're talking about the sort of messy feelings like grief, we're not saying that we're canceling those feelings. It's not about toxic positivity. It's about holding your grief and holding this other way of being too, which is that, because I love that analogy of one paw in front of the other. And often people come to see me and they get confused. That and I just want to be really clear on that, which is we kind of grow to our experiences. So we grow more, like when we can hold all of who we are. So we grow in our heart energy. And we have to put one paw in front of the other to get through. And that's what will get you through. Sometimes it's just as simple as that. You know, I have people who call me call me and there's a crisis of some sort and that's the answer. It's like, we have to take this day by day and also create space for the grief. So we will be sad and we will feel all of that's the full gamut of emotions. And it's a sort of dialectical truth. We can hold two truths at the same time. We can also move forward. So you can feel something and move forward. It's about not feeling something and getting stuck there.
Yeah, no, I'm so glad you brought that back up because I was going to circle back and kind of like elaborate a little bit. But two things, as far as the people around you too, I love to train people to, be on high alert for unhealed folks because, remember the people that are around you bring their collective experiences and their collective lives and so forth. And if they haven't healed or don't have awareness or don't have whatever, you're going to get what you get. And it could be a naysayer. And not everybody's, I'm not saying by any stretch people are perfect or, I'm not saying that, but sometimes being a little bit trained in human nature is really helpful. And you might be the one that helps them turn the corner of healing or more positive energy and things like that, even if they are naysaying you. It just totally depends on the dynamic. But the other thing, you'll find that all of my books have an element of grief and loss in them through my dad, through my own, food allergies and things like that. And the person who co-wrote Percolate with me is Dr. Katie Eastman.
She's wonderful too.
We talk about, making, turning the pain into purpose, I guess is the phrase we all use a little bit, and finding what you can do with what ails you or whatever, and turning that around as you can. And again, not immediate. I'm not saying that, but as time marches on, it can be really helpful to turn around and share your story with other people so they don't feel alone. So you feel healed. It just talking really helps.
Really helps. So it really does.
My second self-help book is the Change Guidebook. So it's before the Success Guidebook. So I've Percolate, the Change Guidebook, and the Success Guidebook. And I talk a lot about change. There was one point a few years ago, well, six or 7 years ago now, where my baby sister, who's 15 years younger than me, was delivering her third child on one floor, and my dad was battling for his life on the other floor of the hospital. Like my dad, as my sister was delivering her baby, my dad came in through ICU. And my poor mom, she's running back and forth between both floors. And, that's life. And how do you navigate those moments?
What's the takeaway from the change guidebook for something, a moment like that? If we could just give the audience now a sort of an understanding of that.
Yeah, I think I think what I basically wrote, I'd have to probably go back to it exactly, but it's, don't collapse under the fall of grief, because that's a moment, and we have these moments, and we have to navigate through them somehow. And it might take every ounce of everything within you to do so, and maybe a few people around you to help you get through. But those are those moments where we believe in ourselves, and people believe in us too, not for sports, but for the moments that are challenging in life. And we call on every ounce of resilience we have to survive, every ounce of energy we might have, even a glimmer of positive, to apply to it. We have all these tools in our toolbox right then in those moments.
Well, you have to.
A moment where you do something else, a positive moment, a humorous moment, a joke or whatever, applied appropriately, of course, and things like that, is sometimes what we need.
For a little bit of a shift, a little bit of a breather, a little bit of respite. So just being really kind and compassionate with ourselves in these moments, because they are so human, and they're part of our human experience. It's what it means to be on the planet.
It's things like that, and you just draw upon courage is another cool word that we don't talk about enough. But really, what I want to do is help people find inner peace and find those moments where they know when things aren't peaceful, how to get back to
That place.
what feels like peace for you. Yeah.
I want to just loop back round to the 10 sort of, I suppose, tools in the toolbox, the 10 things you talk about. Maybe we could just list those really quickly. And obviously, and again, we're thinking about peace, because when you give yourself permission to experience your idea of success and find your purpose and embody it and bring it in with the visualization, with all of the things we've been talking about, then, there is a real, you are in a state of peace, and that you wake up and everything feels aligned, and there's not that you don't have the anxiety or the niggle or all of that stuff. So let's go for these 10 sort of tips or rules or practices, just we'll throw that in for the audience, and then obviously there's more in the book, just so we get an overview.
The first step is imagine, then believe, then focus. That's section 1. And then it goes plan, ask, network. And then part 3 is collaborate, sustain, adjust, and then celebrate. And there were 2 chapters in this book that were really hard to write. The last one in particular, because I'm like, how do you leave people better off than the way you found them? And so I put the last chapter as celebrate. And I don't mean go to the bar. What I mean is a toast to you and success stacking. So what I mean is celebrating your little successes one at a time and gathering them up and success stacking, kind of like habit stacking, only success stacking. And I came up with a little toast to you, where I want people to kind of go all the time, just to remember about themselves, about being trust, open-mindedness, alignment, self-worth, and truth. And that's the little toast to you kind of at the end of the book. And the beginning of the book is an assessment about how much we're sort of imagining and believing in ourselves in that moment. And then at the end, it talks about the toast to you and celebrating you.
The networking chapter, which is, I loved looking at that, reading that, because you talk to introverts, and I think that's really important. I think when people have different ways of being in the world, socially and in work environments, certain things can feel really overwhelming. Empaths, and when you're absorbing energy, and we have to learn how to have boundaries, but also just being introverted. You have a sort of a way of, there's a really great invitation, of how to navigate that. Do you want to share that with us?
Well, I do. With networking, I think that the really big part of networking, people kind of get it wrong. They think it, like, when you're like, let's just pretend we're in a room. Yes, it's really important to exchange numbers or emails or whatever it is, names even, kind of thing. But it's more important to figure out why we're all there. Because sometimes people think networking is selling, and you can get in a room where everybody's selling everything to you and no one's buying and no one's really listening and you feel like nobody cares. And so I think it's important in those moments to kind of take a look around and understand that, there's people in the corner, there's people who won't stop talking, there's people listening. And who are you? How are you showing up for networking, and who's showing up around you for networking? And I think people get it wrong and get scared of it because they think that you need to go into a room and hand out 100 business cards and talk 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 talk. And I think really what you could do is be armed with questions for other people and a good set of ears, and listen and learn and connect in more deep ways. So if you and I were in a room and we had a couple people around, I think I'd tend to be the one saying, tell me about yourself, tell me about your books, tell me who you want to read your books so I could help you. Can you give me a couple books so I could hand them out? Can I have, you go deeper than, hey, what's your name? What's your email? And can you do this for me? Because I really need you to do this for me. I need to be on your podcast, and I need you to help me sell 10,000 books. That's a totally different aggressive vibe. And people go, oh, you know? And so I think being armed with questions and being armed with compassion for the other human for real, or the other humans in the room, is a totally different vibe of networking.
I also loved the Sally Huss story about this 80-year-old who had written, I can't remember how many children's books, but 100, I was going to say 80 or 100 children's books. For 2 decades, for 20 years, she started writing when she was 60. And that's in the sustain chapter, isn't it? And there's this idea of like what it means to sustain. I think that's really important. And I think that's something that can really overwhelm people sometimes too. When you have, this, we've had the focus, you had the focus earlier on. And I always say that, start to visualize, imagine, visualize, and then we have to take those very, very small steps. But the small steps are okay, like little steps. It doesn't have to be massive things that you're doing. It's just, but you are on one paw in front of the other paw every day. And then there's the moment where you've written the book, or you've got the publishing deal, something's come in, you've manifested something. And then it's the sort of the question of how to sustain and how to just show up to that. And I would say, I love the idea of not getting wrapped up in other people's version of all of it. Like, just be in your own, stay in your own lane, stay in your flow, trust, know that you've got this. Where there was one book, there's potentially 99 more. Although, I mean, that's quite she's pretty prolific.
It's a good way to look at Sally Huss. I mean,
I just love Sally.
That's my best buddy in the world. Yep, my best buddy is 84. I love her through and through. Yeah. And I've had the good fortune of hanging out with her and helping her write her last 8 books. And yeah, so we have, I said, Sally, with the way you illustrate and things like that, we need a book about food allergies for children. And so we have one of the top books in the whole world for children on food allergies. So just a really cool human. But here's the thing about Sally. She's actually a tennis pro. She's in the Occidental Hall of Fame for tennis. And she's just so cool. She happens to be a phenomenal artist as well. And her parents were so cool when she was younger. They recognized both talents and surrounded her with love, not pressure. And she picked tennis for a really long time. And she beat guys playing tennis. You should talk to her. She beat guys playing tennis when it was not okay to beat guys playing tennis. And she's got some great stories. But basically, she had art galleries everywhere. After her tennis career was over, she had art galleries everywhere that closed after 9/11. And so then she started writing children's books. And to be 84 years old and use a computer as well as she can and illustrate as well as she can, her mindset is incredible. She's just something. I learn from her every day of my life about how to survive to be 84 and how to survive to be 84 with purpose.
She's an inspiration.
She really is neat.
As are you, Elizabeth.
Oh, gosh. Thank you.
It's been so wonderful to talk to you and get a kind of idea of this mapping of success, of authentic success, this sort of return to self, and this idea of, really living a heart-led life and what that feels like, and, the real following of heart.
Pivot when you need to, for sure,
Tell me a little bit about your journey and how, I suppose, your sort of more of your inner journey of how you came to this place of the heart and the angels and God.
Yeah, all of it. Most of my young career was spent in the financial services industry, teaching and training people all around the world and so forth. And then I started to have children, and I was flying around the country with two small children and a nanny in tow. And I'm like, this is not great for any of us at this point. And my immune system went. I developed life-threatening food allergies. And that was the start of life-threatening food allergies and, kind of being derailed and really feeling sorry for myself. And it's just food allergies, but I really felt just funky eating out, socializing, things like that. It was not a good moment or series of moments at all. And I got divorced. I got remarried, had two more children and so forth. We moved all the way to Maine from California. And then about 4 weeks after we moved here, my father had his first stroke. And throughout all of that, I was still feeling kind of funky with food allergies and awkward and sad and all these things. And it was that moment in the speech therapy session when my dad said benevolence, courage, determination, I'm like, oh, I'm silly. Victim mode, woe is me, is gone in this moment. And I took out a journal and I started writing Percolate right in that moment. Yeah. Absolutely started writing Percolate. And I'm a terrible artist, but I mean that. I don't go down on myself too, I'm not too terribly critical of myself, but I am really not a good artist. And I put this teapot with ABCs coming out of the spout, and Percolate was born. And when I submitted it to Hay House, originally each chapter was a letter that he had said, and we changed it into a few other things. And then I've just gone from there through. I thought when the littlest one was in first grade, and we were free and clear of being at home with kids and things like that, in a kind of a sad way, actually, because that was really fun. But I'm like, okay, I'll go back into the financial services industry. And I was there for about a year before I closed the door and said, I hate this, and wrote down the words, best ever me, best ever you, because I felt like I had to be like 150 people at once to try and watch kids, hold down a job and do everything well and make dinner and take care of myself even, which was last. And I quit and started Best Ever You. And that's kind of how it all began.
It's actually, these are our stories. They're so important to hear properly. But it's been so wonderful to have you on the Love Purpose Connection podcast, Elizabeth. Thank you so much for joining me and us. And before I go, I always ask that question. These words behind me, Love Purpose Connection, what do they mean to you?
Oh, heart. I instantly just all right here. Just heart-based thinking, with love, find your purpose, connect with community. It's the percolate. You don't want to percolate I and me. You want to percolate us and we. And you want to go right here with your heart. And when you align your heart, truth, and energy, anything's totally possible. So thank you for your podcast. It's amazing.
Thank you so much for this conversation. I hope lots of people hear this. They will. It was wonderful. Thank you so much for listening to Love Purpose Connection with me, Estelle Bingham. If you enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts. I'd really appreciate that. And if you really liked it, then leave me a review so I can keep doing what I love, healing one heart at a time. You can also follow me, Estelle.Bingham, on Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest releases. If you feel in need of some extra guidance, then my book, Manifest Your True Essence, could be helpful. You can find it online or in any major bookshop. In the meantime, thanks again for listening, thanks again for watching, and I will join you on the next episode of the Love Purpose Connection podcast.